From master builders to interior decorators, bulldozers and giant excavators, wildlife are the architects of engineering marvels. Indeed, what we call the wilderness is the home of billions of highly organized workers. For far longer than humans, and often on a much grander scale, animals have transformed our world. In this episode, works of monumental achievement are constructed by the engineers of animal empires. Many hands make light work, and there's always safety in numbers. Yet a crowd can also attract the wrong kind of attention. In the vast empires built by wild workers. The largest built structure on Earth is not made by humans. So enormous it can be seen from space, the Great Barrier Reef is one of nature's greatest wonders. Constructed by tiny corals, it is 2,300 kilometers long, and at its widest, 240 kilometers across. Home to one of the most complex communities on the planet. Visited by the ocean's most impressive animals. The coral structures we can see are made of limestone. Hidden inside are thousands of very hard-working little animals called coral polyps. They extract calcium and carbon from the water and use it to build their fortresses. Protection from the outside world. The most industrious among them expand their structure by 10 centimeters a year. Not much on its own, but with billions of coral working together over 500,000 years, they've constructed an empire. On a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. Most animal empires begin with an individual or family home before expanding into something much bigger. In North America, prairie dogs belong to close-knit family groups. A dominant male, several females, and their offspring all live under the one roof. The entrance to their home is adorned with a volcano-shaped dome. But inside is where things really get interesting. Spread over around 30 meters of tunneling, are sleeping quarters. Storerooms, inbuilt ventilation holes, and escape hatches. Some chambers even have ensuite bathrooms and high-tech anti-flooding installations. Prairie dogs are house-proud and spend a lot of their time on maintenance and DIY improvements. In the process, each family loosens and fertilizes nearly 6 tons of hard-baked soil. Some are a little more fanatical than others. The family also mows the grass surrounding their burrow into a perfectly manicured lawn. Combined with their fertilized soil, the results are stunning and draw in bison and other grazers who benefit from the more digestible cropped grass. The family rarely wanders beyond the confines of their childhood home until the young males are ready to start their own family and head out to build a new home. They quickly enter a competitive real estate market. Several hundred prairie dogs live together in a giant network of burrows called a town, which can extend over 600,000 hectares. The biggest town is home to 4 million homemakers. There are so many tunnels, not all can be regularly maintained. That's when the squatters begin to move in. Burrowing owls and toads, skunks and stoats, and mice in their thousands. What the prairie dogs designed as their perfect hideaway has turned into a refuge for freeloaders, whether they like it or not. Some rather unsavory characters have also moved into the growing neighborhood, like dangerous badgers and coyotes who prey on the rest of the town's inhabitants. To cope, the prairie dogs have set up a neighborhood watch. Each tunnel entrance serves as a watchtower, and family members take turns on guard duty. When a hawk appears on the horizon, everyone hears the alarm and heads for cover. However, not all the alarms are the same. Prairie dogs have different calls for different threats. A badger can dig up burrows, so hiding underground is of no use. Instead, the prairie dogs cautiously monitor his movements, alerting all to his presence. They can even describe the predator's shape, size, and speed. In fact, prairie dogs have one of the most complex languages ever studied, possibly because, as town planners, they have created an obvious target for predators. Wherever animals join together in large communities, hunters seek them out. Bee-eaters try to get the jump on would-be intruders by constructing their homes in hard-to-reach places. Like a medieval castle, their burrows are built where there are natural defenses. The cliff's vertical drop is a deterrent for lizards, snakes, and even other birds hoping to besiege the colony. So the bee-eaters are free to take turns ferrying food back to their chicks. And making house repairs. The bee-eater is one of the few burrowing birds in the world. They use their bills to loosen the soil, then flick the debris out with their short legs. Each nest is about 1.5 meters long and requires the excavation of around 13 kilos of dirt. Together, the whole colony is like a block of high-rise apartments, with up to 500 hollow nests crammed together in just a 100-meter stretch of cliff face. There are lots of noisy neighbors on the lookout for trouble. Building nests together is a clever defensive strategy used by around 13% of bird species worldwide. In some cases, the numbers alone are so overwhelming, no other defenses are necessary. Black-browed albatross construct giant colonies on the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic, one of the few tracts of land available for nesting this far south. Pairs mate for life, and each year they return to the same colony they were born in to raise a single chick. Their offspring is nestled 0.5 meter off the ground in a solid nest made of mud and guano. Reinforced with grass roots and stems, they're strong enough to withstand the fierce storms of the South Atlantic. Across the islands, the nests are the foundation of a number of permanent cities that 1 million albatross and their chicks take up residence in each year. The cities also attract southern rockhopper penguins, who try to cram into any available nooks and crannies. Marauding caracara patrol the periphery of the colony. To avoid the hunters, the birds pack tightly together in the center of the rookery, where the odds of survival are higher. Here, space is at a premium, although the shared living quarters can sometimes get a little messy. Putting up with the chaos is worth the effort, however. With far too many targets for all the predators to take on, the majority of chicks will remain safe until they fledge. Following the flock provides protection. But when animal cities become overcrowded, competition can heat up amongst the residents. In Australia, up to 100,000 pelicans can travel en masse from the coast into the arid heart of the country to breed. Their destination is one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. Lake Eyre, one of the biggest salt pans in the world. The salt is a half a meter thick, and it's blistering hot. Yet every decade or so, the salt pan floods, forming the biggest lake in Australia. It's a mystery how the pelicans know when to come. Yet every flood year, they form an enormous colony. In bumper years, it comprises a third of Australia's entire pelican population. As soon as they arrive, nest construction begins. They might have only weeks until the water dries up, so there's no time to lose. Males are in charge of collecting building materials for the nest. While the female guards her chosen brood site. Out here, there isn't much vegetation to go around, so it's a competitive game. Even a few blades of grass must be fiercely protected. Pelicans have the longest bill of any bird in the world. Good for snatching and grabbing. It's tiring work making your way past all the pickpockets. At last. For now, it's a struggle to compete in such a crowded city. But soon the chicks will hatch, and this pop-up outback colony will disappear as the pelicans disperse, leaving behind only the nests the males have fought to create. Other animals build more permanent structures, laying the foundations for some of the world's greatest empires. Gomantong Hill in Borneo is punctured by a series of enormous caves. Home to one of the largest colonies in the world of bats. Safe from predators in the deep recesses of the cave, they cling to the roof in their thousands. It's thought 1 million bats make their home here. Most of them are wrinkle-lipped bats, barely the size of a mouse. Yet together, they're capable of carving stone. And they do it just by breathing. Bats exhale giant amounts of carbon dioxide each day. It reacts with water to form an acid that eats through solid rock. The decomposition of the massive pile of their droppings also dissolves the cave floor. Over 2 million years, bats have constructed the cathedral-sized caverns in which they now live, doubling the size of their dark abode. Now, other cave specialists have moved into the renovated dwellings. Swiftlets roost in barely their nests they construct from their own saliva. Downstairs, an army of cockroaches makes a good living from bat droppings and the corpses. As the light begins to fade, the swiftlets return to their nests to sleep, and the bats begin to stir. While they're safe in the cave during the day, they must leave each night to hunt for insects. But outside, danger awaits. Hawks, eagles, and kites know the home address of the bats, and they gather at the cave's entrance on dusk, prepared for battle. The bats marshal together at the city gates into giant swarms. Defensive swirls, thousands strong. Then they make a break for it. As many as 14,000 bats a minute stream out of the cave. Beyond its protection, they have only each other for safety. The birds pick off the slowest flyers, and in doing so, actually service the bat colony. The sacrifice of a few ensures the community remains healthy and free of disease. So that bats will always continue to live in the dark underworld they have helped create. When predators are removed from the equation, animal empires are at risk of running rampant and can cause more harm than good. Although natives of Europe, rabbits were introduced into Australia in the 1800s. They were a Christmas present to make European settlers feel more at home. At first, there were only a handful. But they quickly built an empire that would stretch over 70% of the continent. Rabbits construct underground houses called warrens. and these became strongholds from which they launched their invasion. Native predators like the wedge-tailed eagle hunt the intruders. However, they can't keep up with the influx of enemy troops. Most of Australia's animals raise a maximum of 3 joeys a year. Rabbits can pop out 25 kittens in the same time. Overwhelming numbers swelling a population that is spread out of control. So desperate were Australians to try and contain this imperial overstretch, they constructed the world's longest fence to try to curb the rabbits' advance. Stretching over 5,500 kilometers, it failed nonetheless. Rabbits now number in their billions and are eating animals such as the kangaroo out of house and home. Unchecked by predators, this animal empire has helped turn great swathes of the Australian outback into a dust bowl. When animals join together to build giant colonies, their impact can be extraordinary. Surprisingly, the empires which have the biggest footprint are constructed by some of the tiniest workers. Ants control every millimeter of the Earth's surface wherever they live, which is most places. These big-headed ants are working in a production line to harvest the seeds of an everlasting daisy, which the ants feed on. Only the worker ants in the colony do the hard labor, as beefed-up guards watch on from the nest entrance. The workers are sterile, and their entire focus is on providing for their queen, who is housed in a giant nest below ground. Very few animal cities in the world have such a highly specialized workforce. Where individuals change their size and shape to suit their function in society. With each ant perfectly suited to its role in the production line, the colony can harvest enormous amounts of flowers. Working as a team, ants are capable of moving more earth than earthworms, clearing away dead animals to reduce the spread of disease, and harvesting more plants than all other herbivores combined. For ants might be small, but they are prolific. In most environments, if the weight of all of the animals was added together, ants would make up 1/5 of the total. Combined with their ability to work together as a seamless unit, it's a formula for world domination. The most powerful and aggressive ants of all are able to double the size of their empires from one day to the next. They are pirates, and the day begins with a raiding party. Called slave maker ants, they are targeting a colony of another species of ant, nesting beneath a log. Distinguished by their black-striped abdomen, the besieged Formica ants raise the alarm by releasing a pheromone, the chemical equivalent of a warning siren. It is also toxic and used to attack the invading slave maker queen, heart of the slave maker colony. Overwhelmed, the queen goes limp, and the Formica ants carry her body deep into their nest. But this is just what she's been waiting for. It's a trap. Slave maker ants are immune to the Formica's pheromones, and the invading queen is unharmed. As soon as she's in reach of her rival, the queen of the Formica ants, the slave maker ruler springs back to life and attacks her enemy. It's a brutal assault which smears the Formica queen scent all over her attacker. By assuming her foe's chemical identity, the slave maker queen can control the entire Formica colony. She has enslaved the nest, and her new servants immediately begin grooming her and tending to her every need. Meanwhile, the slave maker troops begin ferrying the Formica eggs back to their own nest. Some will be eaten, but most will hatch and become slaves to their captors. One colony of slave maker ants has now expanded into 2, and there will be more to come. The slave maker raiders ransack around 6 nests each summer. The homes and fortresses of other ants falling in quick succession. Eventually, their slaves will rebel, and control will be lost. Today has been a victory, but just like all rulers, the power of the slave-maker ants ebbs and flows. Social insects are so effective because they are the most cohesive empires in the animal world. And yet they operate without any leadership. On the jungle floor in Borneo, a line of termites is out on a foraging trip. Like the ants, they have a queen who doesn't give any direct orders. Termites have no architects, engineers, or bosses. Each individual carries out tasks according to hardwired instinct. The smaller workers in the foraging party collect moss and lichen, which the termites feed on and roll into bundles. The bundles are then passed on to the larger workers, who are strong enough to ferry the food balls back to the nest. Each termite seems to know what to do without ever being given a directive. By working together, these insects transcend individual size. And when they put their minds to construction, the results are astounding. Found in outback Australia, these majestic towers can be up to 8 meters high. They're among some of the tallest structures made by any animal, which is why their builders are called cathedral termites. Each tower houses millions of individuals. If scaled to human size, they would be 4 times the height of the world's tallest building, soaring over 3 kilometers into the air. No mean feat for an army of workers who are blind and never seem to need instruction. Termite mounds are such impressive real estate. Like the prairie dog towns, they attract a lot of squatters. Golden-shouldered parrots nest exclusively in the mounds. It's the perfect nursery for their growing chicks. The walls keep the young warm and provide protection from predators. A system of holes throughout the mound also provide ventilation. Once the chicks fledge, the same nest is never used again. Probably because once the intruders have left, the termites repair the damage to their mound with even stronger reinforcements. While some house squatters can be a nuisance, most animals work together to keep their communities running. Nowhere else is this more obvious than in the Coral Triangle. A tract of ocean in the West Pacific where individual reefs are home to as many fish species as found in the entire Caribbean. This is the Amazon of the ocean. And it is thought this could be where modern coral reefs began. The Eden from which all other reefs were eventually spawned. "30% of the world's coral is found here, spread out over numerous interconnected reefs, covering an area larger than Ireland or Panama. They built the reefs from the bottom up, but helping them run their vast cities is a cast of colorful characters. Crabs work as garbage collectors, consuming dead and decaying organisms, the leftovers from someone else's meal. Sea cucumbers might be brainless and spineless, but they are living vacuum cleaners, mopping up the microscopic particles the crabs have missed. The sea apple has a particularly fascinating way of doing this. A ring of mucus-covered tentacles ensnare bits of food and then pop them straight into the animal's mouth. The mouth covers the tentacles in more mucus, and the whole process starts over. Colonies of garden eels sway in the current, almost as if they are strands of seagrass. Each eel has its own private burrow, close to its neighbor, but not too close. With good eyesight, they sway back and forth, feeding on plankton as they drift past. When danger threatens, they vanish back into their subterranean city. Rounding out the city sanitation team are those who scrub down all of the public transport vehicles. Giant animals like these manta rays pulling into a local cleaning station. When the rays put on the brakes, crews of cleaner fish jump on board. Large animals carry heavy loads of parasites and rely on the stations to remain healthy. It requires a lot of trust and is a clear example of the cooperation between species that's necessary to keep the reef running smoothly. Like any city, reefs also need demolition workers. Nearly 1.5 meters in length, humphead parrotfish use their powerful beaks to excavate the coral itself. By bulldozing their way to the nutrients inside the limestone structures, they strip the reef back to its foundations, providing space for new corals to grow and kick-starting the urban renewal process. The consumed coral is turned into a fine sand. In a single reef, the fish can produce tons of it each year. Parrotfish are the only animals capable of demolishing coral on such an industrial scale. Although their true importance is not fully understood, it is thought that without their services, coral reefs as we know them today would cease to exist. The fine white sand the parrotfish produces eventually forms tropical beaches. And they are an alluring destination for an animal that is perhaps the greatest builder of all time. Humans began constructing shelters a few 100,000 years ago. A blink of an eye compared to the evolutionary history of the rest of the world's engineers. In that time, we have been very industrious. Like animal cities, our own suffer from overcrowding and competition. We need security, cleaning services, and garbage collectors. Demolition workers pull down the old, and architects build the new. However, in the construction of our grand cities, we have removed many animal homes. Some animals still remain and have even thrived. Pigeons and squirrels. Raccoons and even koalas have all managed to find a place to call home in this concrete jungle. Wherever humans have built, animals have fitted into any available space left to them. Or in some cases, refused to be evicted. But these are the lucky ones. Like any powerful animal empire, our reach is far and wide. Most animals are unable to cope with the rapid changes. The loss of their houses, yet we are the architects of this new world. Whether we choose to make room for animals to have their homes too is up to us.